been talking a little bit about how Yakuza is becoming woke, but what I really should have said is that Yakuza is now becoming woke by Western standards. And that's very important to kind of distinguish because Yakuza has been woke forever, right? Unless you're a hardcore weeb, you wouldn't pick up on certain things or the intricacies of like Japanese culture and how the world of Yakuza doesn't mesh with reality, right? How it like glamorizes prostitution, how it glamorizes all these like criminal lifestyles, how it does this or that, right? This is technically woke stuff, right? In Japanese culture, right? This isn't something that like Western fans would pick up on because, of course, we're not Japanese. But the franchise has been doing this for a very, very long time. And the only difference with Yakuza 8 is that we're starting to slide into westernized style wokeness. As things get more and more globalized, we're going to see more and more propaganda that's like targeted towards an entire global audience. And by doing that, it becomes more and more ineffective because what do the Japanese care about certain Western topics, right? Like maybe they'll take people's word for it, but like when it comes to certain issues, but for the most part, they don't really care, and they shouldn't care, right? Just like we shouldn't care about their intricate social issues, right? Just like how we shouldn't be commenting on their culture in this regard. But like the thing is with Yakuza, the series has always been woke, right? I've been talking about this for a long time. I've been talking about like how Yakuza 5 kind of has woke elements, right? I've been talking a little bit about like um the world that Yakuza portrays and just how it doesn't make any sense. And like I would say being woke is the least of Yakuza's problems, but it has always been at the forefront of the franchise. There's always been like this undertone of just like woke culture to these games. And I think a big thing that a lot of Western fans are overlooking is the veneration of Koreans, right? Where there's always some like character that's portrayed very sympathetically or attempted to be portrayed very sympathetically who actually secretly has Korean ancestry, right? I'm thinking specifically of Part from 5, a character that anybody with like an actual brain hates because of the way she manipulates Haruka and just like the very clumsy way they try to like make her getting axed off look like some horrible thing as opposed to like just karmic justice for being like an absolute terrible person. Like there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said about characters like Park, but one of the interesting things about her is that like she is like Korean. She is from Korean ancestry. She's like blending into Japanese culture, like a parasite, like an undetected, like a like a chameleon trying to pass herself off as Japanese because people would judge me if they knew I was Korean, right? Like that is the undertone to Yakuza 5. That is like I think that's the stated reason why she aborted Goro's baby, Majima's baby, because like oh no 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 she did that for her career, right? Which they also try to prop up as a good thing, by the way. Like oh I have to do it for my career. No, fuck your career. Like you see all this stuff, like you see this character and how she's portrayed and how she's like depicted, and like you get like this really sinister, manipulative person who's like done a lot of terrible things in her life. Like honestly, like I can't think of a single like Yakuza character I hate more than that bitch. Okay? Like I cannot stand her. She is the worst. But like, the way the game tries to present her is that like they try to make her out to be this really sympathetic person. Right? There's that really infamous bit where like she takes Haruka out to the arcade and they bond a little bit and they have fun and like oh we're getting closer and then she just dies, right? Like it's supposed to come off as like really tragic, but like I think most fans like see that as like an epic W, right? That was just like that was a karmic death, really, but it's not portrayed that way, right? It's portrayed as a tragedy because like ooh she's adopting Haruka, she's doing all this stuff for her, she's giving her a career in the idol industry, which she's going to give up for the stupidest reason possible. Like she's doing all this stuff, right? And no, like she just dies, and then that like kicks off like the rest of Act 3, right? It kicks off what's been going Akiyama's storyline. He gets involved with Haruka. They do some things. They get involved in certain things. Haruka continues like her legacy. That is a big thing, the undertone to it. Like one of the things, like Haruka feels the need to fulfill the lifelong dream of this manipulative whore, right? Really because she was nice to her once. And like it's like this is the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say like Yakuza is woke, because like it really wants you to respect people that don't deserve any kind of respect whatsoever. Right? Like that is very true with like the Yakuza stuff in particular. Right. But like that also extends to a lot of random NPCs and random side stories and like random things that happen in this game. Right. Like it's not just Park. Right. There are a lot of people in these situations that just deserve everything bad that happens to them, but like they're always treated like they're a victim of circumstance, or just like it's just the sign of the times or whatever. Like there's no real consideration as to like maybe these people shouldn't be allowed to do what they're doing. Okay, maybe there should be more pushback against these people. Maybe there should be more conflict here or whatever. But no, like all the characters just blindly just go along with like everything that's put in front of them. Like I think specifically of that scene in Yakuza Kiwami 2 where like Kuryu meets like the mama at the bar who's like, "Ooh, she's actually a man." And like this is supposed to take place in like 2005 or some shit. And like this 30 or 35-year-old Japanese guy is just like, no, it's fine to be who you want to be. Like, just do it. Do it. And it's like obviously propaganda, right? Like it's obviously trying to like introduce like this idea of transgenderism to the Japanese audience. It's meant to be propaganda. But it's a random side story in a game that a lot of people didn't play, right? Like again, that was the moment that I kind of started like turning on Yakuza and addressing like the woke issues with these games, right? Like I have to wonder just how much of this series is woke that I haven't really like caught on to yet. You know, how much of this how many of these games how much of these games tried to manipulate my views of Japanese culture or Japanese society? How much are actual Japanese people influenced by these games? Right? Like I've spoken at length before about how much I don't like Persona 5 and its depiction of high school and this idea that like this fetishization of being a high school student and having all the girls like line up to suck your dick and like dating your teacher and all this degenerate stuff. I've talked about how awful that is, right? How it gives people this really weird mindset as like what their lives should be like, right? And I think with Yakuza, it's like the same thing, right? Because like nobody in Yakuza seems to work jobs. Nobody seems to have any sense of responsibility, right? Everybody just goes around just endlessly just beating people up for no reason, for just singing karaoke, like having endless like fun essentially. All right, there's no real like stakes in Yakuza. Not really. It's all just this weird like thing. Like it's all just like it's all very fake in that respect. Where it feels like it's trying to pander to you, the adult male Japanese man, right? Like, oh man, protect your cute daughter from the thugs, but in reality, like, the daughter is gonna grow up to be a whore and fuck some Chinese guy. I think he's Chinese, is that right? Get pregnant at like 18, like what an epic L, right? Like again, like I think these games have always had these problems. But again, I think up until now, these problems have been very, very centralized for the Japanese. This is propaganda intended for the Japanese audience. The difference we're seeing now with Yakuza 8 is that we're seeing more and more that these games are becoming more westernized. They are more Western propaganda. And I do think sales in Japan are going down. Like people are like going nuts about like, oh, it sold 1 million units. Yeah, because of the Western audience, right? This game was specifically designed for the Western audience, right? Like Yakuza blew up with Zero in the West, and so like I don't think Western fans have gotten tired of it yet, but the Japanese audience have, right? So I think that's kind of what we're seeing. It's the same thing we saw with Final Fantasy, right? Where the Japanese audience are like just buried with all these high quality JRPGs that are just better than Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Trails. All of these alternatives, Pokemon. Meanwhile, like the West is still stuck on this idea that like, oh, Final Fantasy is the best ever, oh, and they don't really like branch out, right? So many people play Final Fantasy and like no other JRPG franchises in the West, right? Or at least they used to. That might have changed after 16, like after Persona 5. I think that's been slowly changing over here, but like that was true for like a very, very long time, right? And I think Yakuza is kind of in the same stance where like, I talked about this a lot, but like it feels like people are not willing to hold the Japanese developers accountable for everything, for anything, right? Right now, everybody wants to put all the blame for the problems with Yakuza, with Persona, with like all the Japanese brands on the localization teams, not on the original developers, right? Like that's the meme when it comes to Rune Factory 5 or like Guilty Gear Strive, right? Like, oh, it was the localization that forced this. No, it was the intention of the original developers. They allowed this to happen, right? And I do think people need to stop supporting projects that do this, right? I've been saying this for a long time. I myself have been leading by example. I have not bought Yakuza 7. I have not bought Yakuza 8, right? I have no intention of buying further Yakuza games because I have become uncomfortable with the underlying themes and the narratives, right? Like, I feel as if this series is very, very woke, pushes a ton of woke propaganda, and I have no intention of supporting it. And it has always been my goal as a content creator to emphasize when these kind of franchises like step over the line and become unplayable. And I think Yakuza reached that point a long time ago. I would say Yakuza 5 was the last good one. Forget the meme that Zero was good. It wasn't. Like, 5 was the last one, right? Like, 5 was the last one I would recommend to anybody. And like even that, again, as I mentioned, kind of has those underlying elements. But again, I do think the franchise is on the way out. I do think it's really interesting seeing how much people are pushing back against um the woke issues in this game, and I really hope this issue is going to escalate by Yakuza 9. Right, we saw this with Mortal Kombat 11. That game was considered very woke. People were upset about it, and like it sold 11 million copies or whatever. Like people thought that like the franchise would stay popular forever, but it did die off with Mortal Kombat 1. Like nobody was happy with that game. And like it's not just because of the woke issues, it's because of the overall quality, but like when you look at that, how that happens, like it doesn't matter how much Yakuza 8 sells. It doesn't matter how popular it is because if these issues are real, if people begin to notice them, if the audience starts like disliking them, they're not going to come back for the sequels. And that is going to be a very, very big problem for the woke agenda going forward.